have paradigms and roadblocks that prevent us from excelling, and they can be real or imagined. Welcome to Beyond Bricks, a podcast that will give you the ability to break through those walls. Here's Dr. Nathan Unruh.
Customer service, done right, can be your company's single biggest competitive advantage. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution. Join customer service authority and best-selling author John DiJulius as he interviews leaders who are revolutionizing their industries. This is more than a podcast, though. It's a movement. The Customer Service Revolution is a radical overthrow of conventional business mentality designed to transform what customers and employees experience. If you're a revolutionary customer service leader who's ready to stop competing on price and obsessed with building a brand that people cannot live without, this podcast is for you. What if you had access to the secrets world-class companies know that enable them to deliver a consistently great customer experience? The DiJulius Group believes some secrets are better shared. That's why we created a framework that divulges what world-class companies know in a simple, easy-to-follow system. Get access now by enrolling in the Customer Experience Executive Academy. Visit cxea.org or email Claudia@thedijuliusgroup.com for more information.
Welcome back, Revolutionaries. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Nathan Unruh. Dr. Nathan is a visionary leader and successful entrepreneur dedicated to enhancing people's lives. With decades of experience in the chiropractic field, he has expanded his reach to start a diverse range of businesses that we're going to talk about. He is a respected author, coach, speaker, and consultant, known for his unique perspective and innovative approach to business. Welcome, Nathan.
Glad to be here, man. Pleasure to be here.
To have you.
An honor.
Together in the past, and I really wanted to get your message to my audience. Where are you at today?
I'm in Sioux, South Dakota, sitting here in my home office.
Beautiful Sioux Falls. You just had me out there a month or two ago, and it was awesome.
Yeah, you were amazing. Amazing feedback.
Thank you. So tell my listeners a little bit about your background.
You know, I cut my teeth as a chiropractor, born and raised in a chiropractic family, and decided at a real young age that's what I was going to do. Well, I went off to school, came back from school, and found myself very well equipped to be a good doctor. But I'll never forget the night, John, that I was laying in bed, and you know those nights that you toss and turn and you're looking at the clock. You know, it goes from 12:30 to 1:30 and those little red numbers, and trying not to wake my wife up. And I'm battling in my own head going, I've got all this education. I know how to take care of people, but I wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't really proud of what I was getting accomplished. I didn't have a thriving business. And I said,
so at this point, you're a chiropractor.
Yes.
Do you have a chiropractic practice?
Yes.
Practice?
Yes.
And it was just
wasn't working.
Yeah.
It wasn't working how I thought it should work.
Okay.
Right. So, you know, it was that night though, I remember that I said, hey, I got to do something different. You know, I got up, put my head in my hands, went into the bathroom, flipped the light on, going, okay, dude, if you're going to change this thing, it's you got to get around different people. You got to read different books. And that's when I really had a pivot. And I started to study, hey, what is it about successful businesses? Because I thought just you got to become a good doctor.
Yeah.
And so that's when I started to read everything I could get my hands on. And I started reading things on, hey, how do you differentiate your business on experiences and not things? What does leadership development look like? How do you raise up a team? And so as I fell in love with that, got around a lot of good people, read a lot of your books, John. And that's when I started to say, okay, this is the secret sauce. And that's what I dedicated my life to in the chiropractic business for 25 years. And so I've owned multiple clinics, and we incorporated those principles into our business.
And up until that epiphany where, you couldn't sleep, You were just doing what everyone else was doing in your industry?
Yeah.
And that was kind of your average of your
Yeah.
five. You were just doing what other successful doctors were doing, but
Yeah.
and so you weren't anything different. And you
Nothing
definitely
different.
weren't. It wasn't feeding the soul.
100%.
Okay. All right.
100%.
So fast forward. Now you're consuming everything you can, and you're
Yeah.
going out. It sounds like you're going outside your industry to say, I don't want to be a chiropractor. I don't want it to be a chiropractor. I almost want it to be an anti-chiropractic practice. Is that kind of,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And here's the reality. And I found this now with our other business, FiveFour, is that whether it's chiropractic, and you probably see this every day, John, it doesn't matter what the commodity or the service is. We can get very competent at delivering our widget. But the juice though is, how do we do it different than anybody else? And that's where you differentiate on experiences. And when I started to understand that and change that mindset and bring that perspective to all my businesses, and then even in our businesses now helping other businesses do it, that's where not only are you much more fulfilled, but you're much more profitable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to me, there's only two ways to differentiate: be the cheapest
Yeah.
or provide something that no one else is. And like you said, in all our businesses, we're no smarter or no better than the top 2%, 3% of our
Mhm.
competitors, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's gonna, be really close. To think that we're the best above
Right.
anyone else is silly. So
Yeah.
what are we going to do that separates us? And again, I don't want to be the cheapest. So I
Yeah.
want to make sure that we're bringing value. All right. So you end up selling the medical practices?
Yeah, I've sold all my practices. Then we have a business that helps serve doctors in lots of different areas, different business solutions that we offer them. A lot of that is about training and development. And then
And is
also,
that all medical industries or niched any?
you know what? Sidecar is only focused in the healthcare space.
Okay.
Our 5-4 business, because that's how that happened. You know how these things, get birthed, is a guy comes to me and says, hey, that thing that you're doing for those doctors, can you do it for me? So we started to do those same types of things, but focused in other industries.
So tell me, 5-4,
Yes.
which is the event I just spoke at.
Yes.
What's it called? 5-4 marketing?
5-4, just 5-4, which is a training and development company, consulting, and we develop strategy. So our whole vision there, John, is the battle for better business.
What's
So
that?
we help businesses battle for better business. Well, what do you mean by battle, Nathan?
Right.
Well, every battle is different. So some companies come to us and say, hey, we want to develop a world-class customer experience. That's our battle. We don't think we're that good. Hey, we need to want to develop a world-class team. Our engagement, our culture's bad. So we help them define their culture. Hey, we want to develop a world-class strategy, a strategy where we are to where we're going, and we help map and path and develop that for them. Or many companies just come to say, we need a world-class development program. And so we put a training and development program in to help them grow their people. Because one of our firm beliefs is companies don't grow, people grow.
Yeah.
If we can help people grow, our companies have no choice but to grow.
Yeah. And so this is huge. The training and development. When I was writing my last book, The Employee Experience Revolution, I came across a statistic that at first startled me, but then, when I thought about it, it made total sense that 90% of an employee's professional development that a company will give them happens within the first 3 to 4 months of their employment. So if you
Yeah.
work for me for 10 years,
Yeah.
okay, first of all the training my company is going to give you, 90% of it happens in the less than the first 6 months. And then your next 9 years and a half, you get 10% of that. And, the things have you found that to be true in a lot of cases?
Oh, it rings so true.
Yeah. Yeah.
But can you imagine? So think about that for a moment. Think about that from a professional athlete. Do they ever stop training and developing? Do they ever stop getting coached? Does Steph Curry stop shooting free throws just because now he's over a 90% free throw shooter?
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
I think mastery in anything in our lives takes
I used to say in
development,
audiences,
ongoing development.
I used to say to the audience, how many people brush their teeth today?
Yeah.
Usually everyone raised their hand. And I'm like, well, how long are you good for? Right? A week, a month?
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
Yes.
your opening was the perfect example of what professional development does, right?
Mhm.
You were stale. You
Yeah.
know, And then all of a sudden you became a sponge and
Mhm.
started reading books and probably watching every TED Talk and going to every,
Mhm.
conference in and outside of your industry, and you exploded. It unleashed your thing. And we forget that that's what motivates employees. The other thing I found out we were doing wrong, and we were probably guilty of it, maybe not to the 90-10%, but we were giving our new employees too much training
Mhm.
in their first 90 days,
Mhm.
overwhelming them. And
Mhm.
we realized that a lot of that training, they didn't need to know now, right? They weren't going
Mhm.
to get to that position, promoted, whatever, until 6 months or a year. Why are we teaching them all that? Let's teach them what's going to make them successful now, today,
Mhm.
spoon
Mhm.
feed it, crawl, walk, and run, have some, small victories. And then when they're ready for the next step, give them the next step.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
And if you think about a statistic that I like is, I'm sure you're an avid reader, right, John? You read a lot of books. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love reading.
Yeah.
We only retain 10% of what we read. So we think, okay, I'm going to go read the customer, experience revolution one time. That's not development. That's what we would call exposure. So when I go to a conference, I get exposed to a lot of good information,
Yeah.
but that's not training and development,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
We may talk about it once, but a good development system takes really four pieces.
Okay.
Number one, great content. Okay, so let's take your work. You got the employee experience revolution, you got the customer experience revolution, all the books you read. That's great content.
Okay.
Okay. Now I need repetition. Tony Robbins said it best. But we need consistency. But without repetition, because that's where the growth takes place, and it gets into the DNA of the individual and the DNA of the organization. Third component, practice and role play. If we don't have a development system where we practice and role play, I mean, how do we greet a customer? How do we make eye contact? How do we shake hands with them? How do we give them the gift of our name? All those little things, and I love how you've termed it, is the service aptitude component.
Yeah.
So it takes practice and role play. And then the fourth component that is missing in so many development programs is accountability. If I can't track, measure, and monitor it, it's a bad system.
Yeah.
So again, number one,
Great
content.
content.
Great content that's quantifiable,
Yep.
content by thought leaders, content that we know that works, done with repetition. Repetition is the master of skill. There's the
Yep.
quote. And then
Repetition
the
is the
third thing
master
is
of
the ability
skill.
to practice and role play. The
Okay.
system has to have the ability to practice and role play, and then accountability. So when we look at our development system, if we can't track it, we think it's bad. So we know not only do we use our training and development system as a way to train up the service aptitude, train up the competencies, we also know when somebody's checking out, John. Now it's a management tool. When some of our team members or some of our clients' team members, when they start checking out on their training, well, what else are they checking out on? What else are they missing? And are they ready to be done? I mean, when there's a problem in your organization, how fast would you want to know it?
Right.
Like,
Immediately.
like now,
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's where a good development system in really creating a culture of learning and constant learning every single week. I love what you said too about did too much. I'm guilty of that too.
Yeah.
Too much. But
And then I'd be mad when you didn't do it. I'm like, we taught you that along with 700 other things
yeah, I
your
already
first
told
week.
you that.
Yeah.
I
How
already
did you
told
not know that? Even though you haven't had to use
yeah.
it yet, and it's year
Yeah.
2. Yeah.
So when you look at that and we look at our team members, I mean, what's the commitment that we'll make every single week to some level of development? I'd say, can you commit 30 minutes a week? 30 minutes a week outside of your regular competencies of what you have to do, learning and training and developing with a curriculum and initiatives that we talk about, we give you 30 minutes a week, done with repetition, done with role play, keeping everybody accountable. Your organization has no choice but to get better.
So when you say 30 minutes a week, and then how does that separate from a new employee who needs a little bit more
Mhm.
to I've been here 5 years?
Yeah.
What's that look like?
Everybody's going to do a minimum of 30.
Okay.
Everybody's going to do a minimum of 30.
Okay.
Now, new employee, obviously in onboarding, there's more that they'll get during their initial phases. So, but we don't believe training is something you did, it's something you do.
Yeah.
It's no different than the Navy SEALs, no different than the professional athletes, no different. I mean, if you want to get great at developing and differentiating your business on experiences, well, that never stops. How
No.
do we constantly just re-innovate and be thinking about that?
In your four, number one, great content. I think that's the easiest, like too easy. If that's all we do, right, is read this book or listen to this, watch this keynote, right?
Yeah,
And that's all I do. I always say that's like deodorant. Within time, it'll wear off, and the odor will come back. And so
100%.
whatever you're watching, sales, customer experience, leadership, yeah, maybe for the next 7 to 10 days, your awareness to those things. But then the minutia is going to come back, and you're going to get back into your old habits, and that's why what you're talking about, what FiveFour does, is so important, because it is the repetition where it turns into muscle memory now.
Mhm,
I mean, I
mhm.
don't have to think. Yeah, I do it every day, but I don't have to think, all right, the 5 E's, right? Eye contact, enthusiastic, greed, ear to, that just comes natural because I'm constantly training it. I'm constantly having to do it. So I don't, it's muscle memory. I don't even have to think about it.
Yeah, and then when you want your team members to go perform, they're not thinking like a professional athlete doesn't get on the basketball floor and all of a sudden think about where his elbow is at,
Right.
and where his stance is
Right.
at. Now it's just perform.
Yeah.
You
Because if
go
you
and
have to think
perform.
about it, you're in trouble.
You're in trouble.
But
You're
early
in
on, you
trouble.
do. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So just developing that into the core and the DNA of your organization. And, you talk a lot about, what's your service statement or your purpose
Yes.
statement?
Yes.
What are the values? Well, we have a tendency to only put those on like a piece of paper and hang them on a wall.
Right.
But how are we seeing that lived out? And I heard this statement about the definition of wisdom, which is living truth. If you pull that part a little deeper, it's really knowledge and action. Wisdom is knowledge and action. You give me your book and I read it, I now have some knowledge. But if I don't do anything with it,
Right.
nothing happens.
Right, right. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. And it's so important for employee engagement, right?
Mhm.
That the company's continuing to invest in me. That's a here. I got something right here that is great. That was in my book. I want to pull up. Quarter LinkedIn research. 94% of employees say that if they would have stayed at a company longer if they simply invested in them more. Nearly 25% of Gen Zs and millennials say learning is the number one thing that makes them happy at work, and the number one reason they leave their job because they did not have the opportunity to learn and grow, which is what FiveFour is all about, right?
100%.
I love that.
I love those stats because if you boil those stats down, people don't quit their job, they quit their bosses.
Right, right.
And if us as the leaders of any organization are not investing in our team, they get stale, they get sterile, they get apathetic, and apathetic is just one foot out the door.
Right. I always say this, Nathan. I always say if working for me is a benefit to your resume, you'll never use your resume, right? If I'm constantly making you smarter and better in all areas, right?
Mhm.
And man, if I ever need to go out and apply and they see that I worked for, the Ritz-Carlton or Chick-fil-A or whatever, they're going to hire me instantly. But the moment I stop adding value to your resume is when you
Mhm.
want to get the resume out because you're not growing anymore. And
Yeah.
I'm hurting you, your profession, your
Mhm.
income, your motivation, and now it
Yeah.
just becomes a job. And
Yeah.
like you, I'm sure this has come up in our previous conversations, but when I graduated from college, I had the opportunity in the late 80s to, with my marketing degree, to make between $18,000 and $22,000, or I was working part-time at UPS. And I had enough seniority to go driving, and the drivers back then made $45,000 a year, right? Double what I could make. That was like $1 billion to me. So I'm like, it's a no-brainer. I knew I didn't want to do it forever. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but had to get out of debt and wanted to save some money.
Mhm.
But while I'm doing it, I'm making more money than I ever thought I could. But every day I drove to work and would say in 29 more years, 6 months and 2 days, I could retire. Right. Because it's not what I wanted to do. It wasn't fulfilling me. It wasn't lighting that fire, deep down. And so, just you got to turn it from a job to something that has meaning and purpose. And I think that's what you guys really help.
Yeah. So you were just saying, it brings up the analogy. I know we probably all heard this analogy, but it's like when you step on a place where they're building a building and you ask the one guy, what are you doing? He goes, I'm laying bricks. And he's laying bricks. I got to pay for my family to survive. Exactly what you're doing the UPS.
Right.
Then you go to the next guy. What are you doing? I'm building a wall. I'm building a structure that's going to stand the test of time. You go to the next guy, goes, what are you doing? I'm building a beautiful cathedral for everybody to be in awe to come and worship. So you go from in the same job, in the same thing, or the same task, you go from a job to a career to a calling. And that's just a perspective change that us as leaders within our organization with the right development program, instilling that into our team members, I think is a big deal.
Becoming the brand customers can't live without is a team effort. Want to get everyone on board and bought into becoming a world-class brand? Consider bringing John in live or virtually for a keynote or workshop. Email Claudia at thedijuliusgroup.com for more information.
And how do you help companies? Because there's feels like an endless list of things we can be training our employees on, right? We have the technical operational aspect, which I feel is of the training usually the only thing, right? I just did a discovery for a restaurant chain, and last week we went to 10 locations in San Antonio and different brands. And I went up, I said, you guys, to the employees, I said, you got customer service training? Oh yeah. Whoa, well, what's it look like? Well, how to open and close, clean, how to restock, and how to use the point of sale system. And like, that was what they thought customer service was. And it is in a way, right? And it's critically important, but that's usually 99.9% of the training is Nathan, if you're going to answer the phones, right? This is how you pull up a client in our database. This is how you schedule an appointment. This is how you get their credit card. But none of the soft skills is taught. So how do you help balance those things?
Yeah, so I think that's I love what you said there, because their interpretation of what customer service is the stuff that people expect. They expect the clean bathrooms. They expect that you know how to check them out. It's all the other things that they don't expect. So when we look at, if you put it into buckets, we have to never stop training and talking about culture. And culture is really the minimum behavior that you're going to allow within your organization. It's how we behave together. Right. So how are we defining the culture, the vision, the mission, the values? How are we protecting it? You can never stop training it, can never stop talking about it, because that's the foundation by all decisions are made. Then everything you teach on the experience. How do we really teach them the service aptitude piece? What does customer experience look like? And never stop training that, because two things I believe always leak in any organization is vision and fundamentals. So keeping the culture front and center through that vision, inspiring and developing trust in your people, teaching and having a development program around the customer experience. Then you're diving into the competencies of the job. Yes, this is what it looks like to sweep the floor. This is what it looks like to stock the shelves. Those things are all important. And then at the end of the day, then drive results. What are we measuring? Because if we can't measure it, how do we know if we're winning?
So how do you measure it?
Every business is different. I think some of the key performance indicators that is common, obviously revenue is one, bottom line's another. Those are the ones that we all will talk about. In the customer experience world, you have the NPS score, you have the EMPS score. I love one of your key metrics was earned growth.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great key performance metric.
Right.
Culture, we developed a key performance metric called the cultural index, where it's really more of a measurement of the leadership, not necessarily the measurement of the team, because really
is the team auditing leadership?
Yeah.
Is that what the no?
Yeah,
so
the cultural index is saying,
right.
Hey, do you understand the vision, mission, values? What is our behavior? What is our perception of it? What is our knowledge of it? Well, if you don't know it, that's my fault, not yours.
Right.
Yeah.
I love
So
that.
those are some just areas that key performance indicators, and every industry then has other small ones. And I shouldn't say small because all the numbers are important, but we have a tendency also though, when we look at numbers, we measure everything and then often measure nothing, meaning we're looking at so many things. What are really the key areas that are going to drive growth within the organization? And I still think the biggest measurement has to be on the team experience, and it has to be on the customer experience.
I agree. And you know, we call the customer experience a ROX dashboard, return on experience. And,
Yes.
you know, and like anything, you can't have, you know, 10, 15 KPIs. If you have more in each area, if you have more than three, you have none. Right. You know,
Yeah.
because if I want who's ever responsible, the leader, if it's a, you know, them to have three that's keeping them up at night. Right. You know,
Mhm.
their turnover, their culture
Mhm.
index, you know, those types of things.
Mhm.
So you know, I got to believe, how do you deal with this pushback? All right, Nathan, you want me to train my existing employees 30 minutes every week? Like that,
Mhm.
not only am I paying Joe, you know, take him off the floor or assembly line or whatever he's doing, and now I got to cover him with someone else, and you want me to pay him. How do you push that when the CFO tells you, are you crazy?
Well, I think it's a great question. It's a common pushback. Well, what's more expensive, John? To train your employees or to recruit new employees?
Yeah. Yeah.
I always think, you look at the what churn cost an organization. It's significant. What does churn cost the customer experience? That number is significant. So again, a good development system though also is delivered in different ways. You got on the job training. That's one way. That's the most expensive, still necessary, and a component. There is also how we develop curriculums via online. So through our system, where you're doing 3 to 5 minute segments, you're getting tested on it. So it's not just a task that you can do. And then we're getting training reports, which becomes another KPI that we have a KPI in our training. Who's doing it? Who's not doing it? So it can be delivered in a way that, hey, if I got a 40-hour employee, 30 minutes out of that 40 hours to help them get better every week, I think is a very small investment of time and money. Because if you don't train them, somebody else will once they leave.
And are they re-hitting the things every so often? Like this month, they're hitting
Absolutely.
this. Yeah, the next month they're hitting something totally different. Because there's so many areas to water, right? To make
Totally.
sure, you know, TOMA, top of mind awareness. You know, we're all
100%.
fighting. Marketing's fighting for top of mind awareness. Sales is fighting for top of mind awareness. Customer experience is fighting for top of mind awareness. Product knowledge, you know, and that's a lot to be thrown at people and expect it to stick.
Well, and think about this. I mean, we don't have any lack of content, do we, John? You and I can go right now on the internet, type anything we want, and get something,
Yeah.
right? Now, first of all, is it good or bad? Well, makes that decision? And we look at it, we're going to vet the right content, the content that does have quantifiable results. It comes from thought leaders, and we're going to do that then, deliver it with a curriculum that we can track and keep people accountable to so that they get that, as like you described, muscle memory.
Yeah. Are you seeing anything different with the younger generations and the TikTok kind of generation of, I like it in short clips? I know, like, if I'll send my son a video to watch, you know what the first thing he does before he presses play?
Looks how much time it is.
He looks how much time it is. And if it's like over 4 minutes, he ain't watching it.
Game
Right?
over.
Right.
Game over.
So,
Game over.
what's the future, or maybe it's current, that I'm guessing, and you're definitely the expert here. I'm guessing we need to make it shorter increments that's interactive. All right. Correct me if I'm wrong. I may be way off here. So I'm going to talk to you about this. It may be 90 seconds. Maybe you have to interact with me, answer something, and then you go on to the next clip. Is that where we're headed?
100%. So like your son, I think is the younger generation, but it's most people anymore. We're bombarded with messaging. We're
Yes.
bombarded in our inbox. I do the same thing your son does. I look how long it's going to take me. I'll do it later. I never do it.
Right.
So purposely if we look at the neuropsychology of how our brains are working, we want to if our development system can create a little bit of dopamine,
Yes.
a little bit of reward system, if
Yeah.
it's delivered in short segments,
Yeah.
that I don't have to go back, or I don't have to commit an hour to look at it, or even 30 minutes. I can do 3 segments today for a total of 9 minutes. I can do 2 tomorrow. By the end of the week, I've done my 30. I've got that little dopamine hit. I'm getting tested on it. It is interactive.
Yeah.
Although
Can
those
they
things,
do it on their phone or iPad?
phone or iPad,
That's great too.
app, however they need to do it.
Right,
But
right.
then it's important that I also say, okay, now just because it's coming out of this box, whether it's your phone or your computer, the leaders of now we talk about it too. When we doing our daily huddles, when we're doing our weekly meetings, when we do whatever your meeting cadence or structure is, now we have something that we're all talking about. We're all for one within this experience and what we're training on.
The other thing I want to talk to you about, which I'm sure you guys are tackling, is in my research for the book. I think this was in the Wall Street Journal last year. 82% of managers today are accidental managers, right? And it's like, hey, Nate, congratulations on promoting you to head of. And it's not saying that Nate wasn't qualified or can't be great, but, basically I'm doing it because, the person just quit and you have the most seniority, right?
Yeah.
But I'm throwing you in the fire that Monday you have to go lead people that Friday you were going out drinking with as coworkers, right? And I've prepared you nothing. And so much is wrong with this is Nate was a great, whatever he was doing, good attitude, like the company. But because I threw him in the deep end without any swimming lessons, in the next 3 to 4 months, his attitude's going to go south. He doesn't like the company anymore, doesn't like his job, and he's out looking. And that's 100% on us. So, my big thing, and whenever I share this with people, they light up and they're raising their hand. I'm guilty of that. Oh my God, what do you recommend? So we're not reactively promoting people. Like, I think leadership development can start as early as, your 90 days. Doesn't mean you're getting promoted tomorrow or anytime soon, but Nate, you've really impressed me. I like your attitude. If this is something that you'd be interested in, I want you to read this book. I want you to watch it and give me some feedback. And then if that works, I want to put you on some projects, right? Just to see if this is, you're a roller coaster. Today you want to be, the next president of the company, but tomorrow you and your girlfriend had a fight and you're checked out, right? Which we do. We're like, we believe the first version and then we find out he wasn't serious. So
Right.
I'm speaking too much on it. You're the expert. How can we in companies start preparing their employees so it's not a reactive promotion?
So I think that's such a common thing. I've done it. You've done it. So many, I hear the same thing. And I use the analogy, we take our best mechanic.
Yeah.
Now we make him foreman. We
Yeah.
lost our best mechanic and we have a mediocre foreman.
Right.
Right. So by looking at that and saying, okay, just because they've done great at the competencies one position, have we really defined what those attributes are, what the training and development system is to put somebody in a management role, to lead people? So there's a great book, John, that I'd like to have a lot of people read when they talk to me about this. And the book's called Who, WHO. And I forget the author on top of my head right now. But what we've done in that, by utilizing just the inspiration from that book, is develop scorecards. So what a scorecard does is, number one, it gives a vision for the role. So what's the vision as for the manager or whatever key position this is? And this goes for every position in the organization, but it's really important for people that are leading people. So then what does an A player, how do we define an A player? Okay, what does it that look like? What would this person need to develop in order to become that A player? And do they have a desire to become that A player? Then we list and making sure that they understand what are all those key responsibilities and how much time is it going to take with those key responsibilities per week. Then that drops into a monthly or quarterly review where they get to measure themselves. We get to measure them as their direct report. We understand where their satisfaction score is. We have a performance score. It's all measurable, but we also have a communication and a feedback loop, whether they're succeeding or not succeeding. Because too many times, like you just described in the managers, we throw them, they have no idea how to lead people. They have no idea EQ or performance reviews, how to do one, how to have crucial conversations. They never had training on any of that.
Right.
So those are the scorecards that we teach, that really was inspired out of the book Who. It's been such a key element in helping move people and give them a path. In addition to what it also allows us to do is also make sure that the biggest gap in most organizations, the biggest complaint is communication. Well, you didn't tell me. I don't care if it's a small organization or big organization. Communication is always a battle that we deal with. The scorecards also now become a
How do you
feedback
solve
loop.
that? We'll be in a management meeting and we'll say, all right, let's do this. Let's run this promotion. Let's, blah, blah, blah. But we forget to tell the masses. And then all of a sudden your wife's showing up and saying, hey, I want to take advantage of that special. And the
Yeah.
employees at that, what special that
Yeah.
marketing sent out, but the right hand didn't tell the left hand,
Yeah.
be prepared. You're going to get, a flurry of people coming in for the special.
Yeah. Again, you look at, okay, what's the strategy of the organization? Number one, have we established the strategy? What's the structure? Well, inside that structure is communication lines. Well, how are we going to communicate? Email's not for communication, it's for clarification. What's our meeting structure? And part of that meeting structure is scorecard reviews, which we are now over communicating.
Yeah.
So again, comes down to structure to support the strategy. And then you couple and put the bow around that with a training and development system. And if we're doing those things consistently, like I like to say, John, let's just make success boring. How can we just make it boring? Day in, day out, doing the little things. I love the Martin Luther King quote. If you can't do great things, do small things great.
Yeah.
So let's start doing the small things great, and we'll have no choice but someday create a really great thing.
I love that. I love that. We're talking to Dr. Nathan Unruh, who is a very successful leader. We're talking about his FiveFour training and development company. If people want to find out more about you, FiveFour, what's the best place to send them to?
I'd say two places. Number one, FiveFour training, spell out FiveFourtraining.com, and then also just my personal website, drnathanunruh.com. Unruh spelled UNRUH.com.
And is it DR?
DRNATHAN. Yes,
All
sir.
right, I'm put these also in the show notes, FiveFourtraining.com and drnathanunruh.com. All right, what am I missing? What haven't we talked about that you think our listeners need to hear?
I think the keys of coming out of this conversation, I'm always reminded and inspired when I get to talk to you, is don't get tired of inspiring people, but put a structure around that. And it takes a very intentional development program to do that. Really create a culture of learning in your organization. Fall in love with the idea training is something we do, not something we did. Understand that conferences are great. I encourage you to invest in them and go to them. Books are fantastic. We all need to read them. But what can we do constantly to make sure we're taking that knowledge and putting it into action? Because that's where the juice is, to make sure that we're meeting our objectives and our desired results for our customers.
I love that. And I think what you're doing is so important because so many leaders fall prey to program of the year, management by bestseller, right? And I've had so many people say to me, and probably my employees probably used to say this, is I'll come in and, hey, everyone's got to read this book. We are doing this. And then they say, just give him a couple weeks. He'll go to another conference or read another book. We don't have to read that book because in 2 weeks he's going to tell us we have to read another book. And he's going to say, don't even worry about that last book. This is where we're going. Right. Yep. And it's, I think it was Jim Collins in maybe Good to Great that said, great leaders say less more often. Right. And so today, one of the things I'm proud of is if my employees know I'm coming in to speak to them, here's what they're going to say. Oh, God, Nate, here's what I'll tell you exactly what he's going to tell us, right? He's going to tell us, be the best experience in our guest day and blah, 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 and this, and they're going to know. And they're right. But I believe when your employees can finish your sentences, that's a good thing because I'm not throwing every shiny object in the world and we got to be this and we got to be this and we got, say less more often. And I think that's what, your development does is reinforcing the basics, and they're not basic, but the foundational stuff that probably made the company great, that as you get bigger, can kill a company if you don't scale that foundational principles. Am I on the right track there?
Well said. Beautiful. Right. Beautiful.
All right. I love what you're about. You're also, I know you're a dedicated husband and family man, and you keep yourself in fantastic shape. What's the secret to all that?
Discipline, having a great partner. My wife is wonderful. She keeps me in check, make sure that tells me what I need to hear, not always what I want to hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know what? I'm a firm believer in if you can't lead yourself, you can't lead anybody else. So that comes back to what are you putting in your head? You conform to what you consume. What are you putting in your body? How are you exercising? So I think all those are just key elements to all of these things we've talked about. It's good. I mean, the development of ourselves is just critical in all areas of our life.
Nathan Unruh. I'm putting FiveFourTraining.com, Dr. Nathan Unruh, UNRUH.com. It'll be in the show notes. You are always like 5 hits of espresso. Whenever I talk to you, I get so amped up. I want to go run, a marathon. Thank you so much. I've really
Yes, thank you.
enjoyed learning and being inspired by you over the years.
Thank you so much, John.
All right, we'll be right back after this, revolutionaries.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and are ready to think about starting your own customer service revolution. To get inspired by more episodes, subscribe now on Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening and for being part of the customer service revolution.